Hey guys, so final professional learning. After we've talked about what racial discipline disproportionality is, I really want to go into depth of how we can talk about or how we can change our classroom. All right, so going over the definition once more. Racial discipline disproportionality is when students of color are disciplined more often, including in-school suspension and out-of-school suspension, than white students. And so just making sure that we are aware of this in our classrooms. And in Oconee County, I wanted to look at the disproportionate impact that Oconee County has. We are 3.3 times more likely to suspend students, black students, than we are other students of color. Okay. So after we've talked about that, and I really wanted to bring that back up, and talking about even the implicit bias that we took the first professional learning, I really want to talk about how we have thought about this in our own classrooms since all of those. So within, and Dr. Murphy, I would have the teachers talk within their groups, and I would put them into groups, and they would talk about these three questions with their partner or the person beside them, kind of like a turn and talk. So, how have you seen racial discipline disproportionality in your own classroom? And then since the two professional learnings, have you noticed yourself being biased towards one race over another? And then what steps have you taken to change these biases you may have within your classroom? And so I'd ask them to talk about those three questions, and then we would come back together and share. All right. So now that we've talked about these things within our own classrooms, I really want to go over what the research says about how we can change this. So I took this from an article, the main Ford and Sassy, the two last names of this article. And so really, this is talking about the difference racial difference makes. And so reading this quote, black students expect teachers to earn their respect and trust over time by establishing meaningful relationships and incorporating features of black communication into classroom interaction. So this portion of the professional learning, I really want us to just think about how we can change our classrooms to make it more culturally responsive, and just thinking about how we as teachers have authority within the classroom. And so making a relationship with the student is prime. We have to make a relationship with the student, and if we don't make a relationship with the student, then it's really, if we don't do that, then there's no point in even trying to change the bias, because it really comes down to your heart behind the change. All right, so authority, and I talked about this just a second ago, but I really want to talk about this, and this is what the same article says. So talking about the authority that the teacher has in the classroom. So white teachers have an understood authority that is granted to them by the system. And so teachers have white privilege, or white teachers have white privilege, sorry. But white teachers have white privilege, and really being aware of that. Like I said before, ignorance is the biggest weapon. And so making sure that we know that we have that. And what I mean by that is, so let's see, especially in class, or even so white teachers have the majority within teaching. And so even in African American communities, white teachers make up the majority of teachers, or at least I know that is true in Oconee, or in Athens, Clarke County. And so usually, if the teacher doesn't look like the student and they can't associate them, they cannot make that racial connection. There has to be a gained respect, and that comes through lots of research that says that. So warm demander. So I want to talk about what a warm demander is. And this comes from Kleinfeld. This is a different article, but it comes from research, and I'm taking this, summarizing this from research. So a high level of, so a warm demander, in this article, it talks about Alaskan and Eskimo students, and how these students how you can approach these students in a urban community. And so, but this is really good, and I really like this portion of warm demanding. Oops, sorry. And so, what warm demanding is basically where the teacher has a high level of interaction or intellectual participation, building relationships, and that's what it's bound upon. And then once they have built that relationship, then they can ask the student to do things, such as like interactive activities, such as that kind of stuff. But even if they like have resistance, you can demand with a smile. So it's like, Johnny, you should not be doing that, and you know why you shouldn't be doing that, things like that. So just making sure to demand, but also, and they are asking a lot of the student, but doing that with a basis of respect, and they know that, the student knows that, and the teacher knows that. Also having opportunities for students to participate without fear of embarrassment, and this is huge because this talks about the Alaskan and Eskimo students needing that, but also I feel like every student needs that. They really need the chance to know that the teacher is not going to just so and so, like, why are you doing that? You know, don't just like yelling out and really just embarrassing the student. And so, or whenever they get a question wrong, oh, well, you should have known that answer. I don't know why you even did that. That's stupid. Like, never saying that, obviously. Just being a good teacher. Okay, so this going back to the Ford and Sassy article. So reviewing warm demander approach to authority. So for African American teachers, legitimacy comes with culture, history, experiences that he or she can share with students. So like I was saying, making that connection. If the student can't make the connection of race with the teacher, then the white teachers have to compensate for that, and that comes through warm demanding. And so I talk about it down here. So structured learning environments to no nonsense. So don't put up with the crap, basically. Also, not trying to be the other mother. And so,
You teach.
go away, because I'm like videoing too. Bye, love you, but go. So making sure that, sorry, that was my roommate. Not becoming the other mother for the student, because so with African American teachers, that can work for them, but with white teachers, it doesn't. The student doesn't need another mother, especially if they have one, because that is just a slap in the face. And so just making sure that we're aware of that. So not trying to be, oh, you know, my sweet baby, blah, 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 blah. Yes, love them, and yes, respect them, but don't try to become their mother. White teachers need to show concern for students' racial safety. So making sure that noticing that bias is key. And so making sure to fight against that, and showing them that there is equality, and more so than that there's equity within your classroom. And so really doing that not only in the way that you talk, but the way that you act as well. And that goes into racial discipline disproportionality, because if we're and we're talking about in those other articles, if we are really like being biased towards students of color, and getting onto them for things that white students, if they did something worse than that, then they could get away with it, but the African American students cannot, then we're really not showing racial safety here. So how does this relate to racial discipline disproportionality? So we're really looking at ourselves. And so here, Dr. Murphy, I would have the teachers again evaluate themselves. So I would go into these questions, and they could talk with their neighbor, and then we would come back together and talk about them. So here's some of the questions. So how are you treating students? Are you warm demanding or just demanding? If you are being harsh, or what are ways you can change that? And then I would go over things that they could evaluate and ask themselves every single day. And so we would come back together and do that. And those are, was I warm demanding in that situation, or was I being impersonal whenever things happen in your classroom? Am I being biased towards white students over African American students? And how am I using my privilege in the classroom? And so I want the teachers to make sure that they are reflective on themselves every single day. All right, and that is the end. but it was fun.